House Judiciary Committee will return to Capitol Hill early to work on 3 pieces of gun legislation. That, of course, in the wake of those mass shootings in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio. The rest of Congress will return on September 9th.
Over the weekend, rallies in all 50 states were held by gun control advocates, urging the Senate to return early as well. The president has promised Congress will address gun control while expressing support for the Second Amendment. Joining us to discuss this, as well as the other issues Congress is expected to address, is senior correspondent for The Hill, Mike Lillis. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, sir.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, we've got these interesting developments on gun control. The House Judiciary is going to come back a little bit early. I mean, realistically, what are they looking at here?
Realistically, they're looking at keeping pressure on Mitch McConnell to do something when the full Congress comes back on September 9th, which is not, we see this game over and over and over again. This movie is that's played out so many times where something happens, there's this enormous public outcry, there's this appetite to do something on Capitol Hill, and then as time passes, that appetite subsides, and the Democrats don't want that to happen this time around. And of course, this happened in the middle of a very long recess. They're gone for 6 weeks, and so you're seeing letter campaigns, you're seeing these rallies that you just mentioned, and what Jerry Nadler is trying to do is keep pressure on McConnell to say, you're not going to come back and do nothing. We're going to have these bills waiting and ready to go. And of course, they already have the background check bills, which passed in February and been sitting on McConnell's desk for months and months, and he hasn't done anything about them.
And where's the president at this point? Because immediately in the wake of these shootings, there was some indication that he would support background checks. He seems to be backing off of that. What is the latest?
Nobody knows where President Trump stands on gun reform. If you can go back decades, or you can go back just this week, and it goes back and forth like a seesaw. I mean, it's really incredible how quickly he can change his mind. He used to support assault weapons bans. After Newtown, after the Sandy Hook massacre, he supported President Obama's prescription, which was background checks, which was limited capacity magazines. There are 23 things on that list, and Trump endorsed it. Since he hit the campaign trail, of course, he wants to brand himself as the champion of Second Amendment rights, and he spoke before the NRA convention, the first president to do that since Ronald Reagan. So he's really branding himself as the champion for the gun control guy. So where is he? We don't know.
With all politicians, follow the money. The NRA was in big time for him in the election, so I'm sure they have a lot of pressure to wield with him, as with many of these other lawmakers, not exclusively on the right, I might add. But are they diminished somewhat as a political power, or are they still, does their opinion still hold as much weight as it always has?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes, they are diminished in power because their fundraising is down. They're losing some of the membership. A lot of their,
they're in turmoil right now.
They are in turmoil. They've lost their president. They lost their chief lobbyist. And there's a new scandal every day in the papers. But that all being said, Wayne LaPierre still can pick up the phone and get President Trump on the other line, as he did after these shootings in Dayton and El Paso, as he did in Bedminster while the president was up there just this past week, and you see the tone shifting as time passes and the NRA gets into his ear.
Mike, talk about there's 3 things, as I understand it, that are being considered here. We got high capacity bans on ammo, on prohibiting people with misdemeanor misdemeanor crimes or hate crimes?
Misdemeanor hate crimes.
Misdemeanor hate crimes from purchasing a weapon, and then a red flag law. Now, some of this, is tricky whenever it comes to due process and all of that. What's the thinking on Capitol Hill? Senator Graham has proposed some sort of red flag laws in the past. Do you see a constituency for this in the Republican Senate?
Sure. If Lindsey Graham is behind it, he's chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's going to be the guy writing the bill. We don't know what it is yet, so the devil's going to be in the details. The House already has their bill. What is Lindsey Graham going to do with his? We don't know. But President Trump went to the right after those shootings, he was at the White House and he endorsed the red flag bill, and the NRA hates that bill. So it was a break from his base on that particular issue. Now, whether or not he follows through, you heard him just yesterday saying, this is a mental health issue. He's been echoing more and more the NRA talking points with video games and all of these things. The gun doesn't pull the trigger. The shooter pulls the trigger. And these are decades-old talking points from the NRA. So it goes back to the question: what does Trump want? What Trump wants, he could probably get if he puts enough pressure on Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. He could get background checks. He could get the red flag law. But we just don't know what's going to happen.
Is that really going to be where he expends his political capital? Seems unlikely.
Precisely.
You've got Susan Collins in a tough reelect. I know her seat was recently moved to toss-up. Are there other sort of swing state or more moderate Republicans who may be allies for Democrats here in the Senate?
Pat Toomey is one. Pat Toomey, if you remember, after Sandy
right.
Hook,
That's right.
he and Joe Manchin teamed up and wrote the background check bill that did make it to the Senate floor. It fell 5 votes short of defeating the Republican filibuster at the time. 4 Republicans voted for it then. John McCain, who's of course deceased, Mark Kirk, who's no longer in the Senate, Susan Collins, and Pat Toomey. So those were the 4.
Interesting.
It'll be interesting now to see if there's more appetite for it. Toomey and Manchin are drafting a new version of that to be introduced probably next month when they come back. McConnell has said we will have a discussion on gun reform. He has not promoted or endorsed any of these bills, not even Lindsey Graham's red flag bill. So he is someone to watch, just as Donald Trump is someone to watch. Is he going to do anything on this? He never has before, and he's always opposed to these things.
Yeah, so Mike, there was also a press conference yesterday with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar about their decision, I guess about Israel's decision and their Rashida Tlaib's own decision not to go to Israel and Israel's decision to bar them. What are the latest developments there, and what was your main takeaway from the press conference?
Defiance was the main takeaway. They are not backing down. They are not apologizing. They think that they were wronged here, that they are sitting members of Congress elected by U.S. citizens, and they should have the right to travel just like any other member of Congress. 2 delegations of members went over, dozens and dozens.
Yeah,
in
why
2
didn't
different
they
trips.
go with that delegation? I was curious. So there was a delegate, the week before, of like 40 different Democrats. Why didn't they join that one?
Unclear.
Okay. Yeah.
If they had this one already planned, it certainly had a different itinerary. The first one was planned by
That was an APAC trip, right?
subsidiary of APAC.
Yeah.
So,
They were not
probably
gonna go on an APAC trip.
they were going to distance themselves from the APAC.
I don't even know. APAC, of course, one thing that's interesting here is remarkably and unusually broke with the Netanyahu administration over the decision to ban these women. But talk about how the politics around Israel have changed in the Trump era and in the Netanyahu era.
Well, this is the big fear among Israel supporters on Capitol Hill in both parties. If you politicize this issue, then you undermine, the decades-long support, the bipartisan support that has been so important in maintaining, the funding and the military backing and all of the things that have gone along with that very tight relationship since 1948. Now you're talking about people saying we need to re-examine our aid to Israel. We need to stop the Codels, the trips to Israel, until this policy is reversed. So it's really a striking kind of departure. And of course, it started with Donald Trump, very remarkably enlisting a foreign leader to go after his political adversaries at home. And we just haven't seen that in an awfully long time. Although I would mention that in 2015, John Boehner inviting Netanyahu to the House floor while President Obama was working on the Iran nuclear deal was also seen as a poke in the eye to the city.
I have not seen the Congresswoman, though, answer. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was some controversy around the organization that was planning their trips, that the organization had made some very anti-Semitic statements and has some, at least had expressed sympathy or absolution for people who were suicide bombers. Have they responded to any of these concerns?
Not that I've seen.
They have. They have actually. I saw their statement yesterday. The one thing people pointed to is apparently they had linked to an article that had some of those controversial comments with a statement at the top that said this article doesn't reflect our views and opinions. So it's not like this organization itself was putting out, the type of controversial comments that you just referenced. So they have responded. One thing that is interesting here to me is the American Jewish population overwhelmingly supported Hillary Clinton in the last election. There's no sign that has changed over the course of the Trump administration, even as they have been, incredibly close with Netanyahu. Is the pro-Israel stance, the sort of hardline Israel stance that this administration has taken, is that aimed at Jewish voters or is that aimed more at evangelicals?
I think probably both. Certainly politics is at play here on all sides, right? Trump is trying to rally his base. He's also trying to bring some of that Democratic Jewish vote into the Republican camp. Netanyahu, of course, faces a tough election next month. He's trying to rally his conservative base, which is fractured, as we know. And then Tlaib and Omar are also playing politics here. They support this boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that's very controversial, and this kind of rises that up and gives them a platform to talk about it a little bit more. Tlaib had signed. She was given permission to go visit her grandmother in the West Bank, but as a condition of that, she had to agree not to travel elsewhere. She had to agree not to speak about the BDS movement. She initially signed it, and then she faced a backlash from the left. So, and then reversed course. So everybody was reversing course here. Everybody was trying to take the temperature of their base and.
That's a tough
That's
one.
a nasty little situation.
Bit of a mess. Well, thank you so much, Mike.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Next up on Rising, as the U.S.-China trade war escalates, 2020 candidates say what they would do if they were president.
But one candidate's China policy has been noted as historically bad by me. UC Berkeley writing fellow Zaid Jilani explains who when Rising continues.